The United States and Iran have been butting heads since the nationalization of Iranian oil fields in 1951, under the rule of Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. Mossadegh was born June 16, 1882, to parents of royalty and political influence. He studied political science in Tehran before moving to Paris to continue his education. In 1914, he would become the first Iranian that we know of to receive his doctorate in law after moving to Switzerland to study. From the moment he returned to Iran, Mossadegh would find himself fighting against neo-colonialism domestically in his own country because of the corruption created by the Americans and British spy networks pushing for further control over Iran and its oil fields. His anti-colonialism stance seems to have developed after his exposure to the West during his schooling in places like Paris and Switzerland. After a short period as Minister of Finance and Foreign Affairs, Mossadegh would take a 20-year break from politics and public life. He would only return after World War II in 1944 to make sweeping changes to his country and inspire a whole new generation of freedom fighters worldwide. Mohammad Mossadegh's first fight after returning as a politician was when he resisted the Soviet occupation and requests for oil exploration in Iran. This was defiantly a strike to the Soviet Union's image of being the good guys when it comes to the crimes of the United States and the West. But that's for another video. Elected to parliament again, Mossadegh from 1949 to 1951 spearheaded a fight against British colonialism where he fought to get a fair 50-50 pay share of the oil wealth which the British government would soon regret not giving him. A few years later, in 1951, Britain finally reluctantly said yes to the 50-50 share, but it was too late. Mossadegh and the parliament had already agreed on a full nationalization of the Iranian oil industry. Mohammad Mossadegh had spent years building up a political career and was already well known in the country, so his party, the National Front, had a lot of say at this time about what went on in Iran. Even the Shah at that time, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, couldn't keep a firm grip on power in Iran, and this was evident with the proposals he was forced to hand over to Mohammad Mossadegh. After the oil was nationalized, the public fully got behind Mohammad Mossadegh, and he was made Prime Minister and Minister of War by the Shah, giving him full control over the military as well. Like most leaders when they come to power, they put people in place who are loyal to them, and Mossadegh would be no different, quickly replacing unloyal military generals and security officials around the country. But this consolidation of power would not be enough, as the two-headed imperial colonial empire working together with one another, using their very own CIA and MI6 to overthrow Mohammad Mossadegh for nationalizing his country's oil. Britain and its capitalist allies worldwide came together to sanction Iranian oil, bringing its production down to basically zero. But even with all this, Mohammad Mossadegh still had support throughout the country. Even if this wasn't true, it's safe to assume that the Iranian people knew who was to be blamed for their economic turmoil, and it was the United States. The Americans had agents hiding out in Tehran, drinking booze and celebrating their coup as it were unfolding, and innocent lives were being erased from the face of the earth. Operation Ajax, as the Iranian 1953 coup d'etat was called by the CIA, had first failed, but a few days later the violent overthrow of another democratically elected official would be completed. Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh would eventually turn himself into authorities to face trial for treason. He would later be sentenced to 3 years and then house arrest for the rest of his life until his death in 1967. The reality of what happened to Mohammad Mossadegh stemmed from the fact that he was supported by the Iranian Communist Party. America during the Cold War was using communism as an excuse to kill and murder millions of people around the globe during this period, including famous President of the Congo, Patrice Lumumba, in 1961. Mossadegh was even supported by U.S. Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas, and he made several official visits to the United States, which begs the question, was Mohammad Mossadegh even a threat to the United States? Yes, he was, not just because of the nationalization of the Iranian oil industry, but because he was an anti-imperialist and a fervent supporter of decolonization of the world. Defending himself at trial, it is reported he famously stated, "Yes, my sin, my greater sin, and even my greatest sin is that I nationalized Iran's oil industry and discarded the system of political and economic exploitation by the world's greatest empire. This at the cost to myself, my family, and at the risk of losing my life, my honor, and my property. With God's blessing and the will of the people, I fought this savage and dreadful system of international espionage and colonialism." Iran for the next 25 years would be under the rule of the same Shah who was placed in power after the coup. Many communist members were executed, and any political dissent was crushed during this period. The Shah would make some improvements to the country during the rest of his years of illegal rule until his overthrow in the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The Shah oversaw the coup against Mohammad Mossadegh, and the boomerang came right back to him 25 years later, because what he did to Mossadegh was done right back to him. In hindsight, the 1953 coup against Iran created the environment for the radical Islamic Revolution of 1979, which saw the installation of the supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini, who was succeeded by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in 1989 after his death. A year later in 1988, Iranian commercial flight 655 was shot down by the United States, killing all 290 passenger and crew members on board. For the past 100 years, Iran has been under constant attack by former colonial and neo-colonial powers from the United States, Britain, France, and even Canada. The Cold War was the perfect excuse the United States needed to exploit, bomb, and take control of most of the world's resources, while claiming communism and the Soviet Union as a reason for it. But the Cold War ended 30-plus years ago, and the United States is still exploiting, bombing, and taking control of the world's resources. Only this time around, everyone that stands in their way is the big bad Soviet Union excuse of today. What do you guys think? What's the reason for the war with Iran? Can the empire still use nuclear weapons as their false flag? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.